Scattered protests continue to sputter, and there are new reports of skirmishes and violence in the wake of this weekend's massive military assault aimed at smashing China's pro-democracy demonstrations. ABC's Todd Carroll is standing by live now in Beijing by phone. Todd, what is the situation there now?
Well, now there's a mood of terror at the center of the city and quiet in the north of the city. To the west of Tiananmen Square, about an hour and a half ago, troops fired into the air. It's not believed that they hit anybody, but they were trying to intimidate people and keep them off at the street. Further down at Tiananmen Square, where thousands of troops are known to be gathered, there are still tanks in formation that have been resupplied recently by helicopters coming in and out of the square.
Todd, there are continuing reports of people trying to block the movements of troops and tanks. Is that still going on?
There's a mood of absolute resistance on the streets as huddles of people gather and talk about the events of the last 36 or 48 hours. They are outraged. On buses that are still blocking intersections, just within the last hour, I've seen people hang up posters saying, "Hang Li Peng, the premier," saying, "Heroes, their martyrs will never die," saying, "Smash the fascists."
Todd, a quick question. There are reports that the order for the military action was given by Deng Xiaoping from his hospital bed where he was undergoing a cancer operation. What do you know about that?
Well, we've been told by some Chinese sources that this may not be true at all, that Deng Xiaoping is seriously ill and could be very near death, and that the actual orders may have come from Yang Shangkun. He's the general who called on the troops to come in, and he may be the man who ordered them to fire on the people and not Mr. Deng.
All right. Thank you very much, Todd Carroll. As Todd noted, the new work week has already begun in Beijing, but very few people are going to work in that city, which is so stunned by this weekend's violence. Gary Shepard brings us up to date now on the situation there.
Beijing's Bloody Sunday is history now, but there are visible reminders everywhere of the shocking massacre that occurred here. Burned-out buses and other vehicles are scattered in many sections of the Chinese capital, and the curious are now venturing out of their homes to look at the smoldering aftermath of the violent attack that dealt a staggering blow to the pro-democracy movement in this country. The brutal assault by an estimated 30,000 Chinese troops ended at Tiananmen Square in the heart of Beijing, where thousands of students had been staging a sit-in for democracy for the past 3 weeks. In a last-ditch effort to stop the army, demonstrators tossed firebombs on armored personnel carriers and tanks as they rumbled into the square early Sunday morning. But it was impossible to stop the advance, and eventually the students were forced to evacuate. Soldiers fired automatic weapons into crowds of civilians, and the casualties were staggering. The Chinese Red Cross says at least 2,600 people were killed. The students claim thousands of others were wounded. There has been no official casualty announcement from the Chinese government. Defiant demonstrators have been continuing to skirmish with the army despite its overwhelming presence in and around Tiananmen Square. At one point, they set an ambulance on fire and aimed it at the troops, but the vehicle smashed into a traffic island, and that prompted the soldiers to open fire once more on the students. This morning, troops were seen severely beating demonstrators in the Forbidden City district near the square, and at least 3 of them were arrested. The Goddess of Democracy statue has been toppled by Chinese troops. Student leaders have gone into hiding, and there are now fears the army may move against student sanctuaries on university campuses in the northern part of the capital. Many buses are not running today. Thousands of workers are staying home, and there is talk that a general strike is being organized to protest the communist regime's brutal response to the student demands for democratic reforms. Gary Shepard, ABC News, Beijing.
There were scores of sympathy protests today from this country to Europe to Asia. In Hong Kong, which will come under China's control in 1997, more than 100,000 demonstrators took to the streets to express outrage over the bloody crackdown in Beijing.
They are not our government. They're crazy. They're mad. They're murder.
And here at home, there were similar emotional marches by Chinese students in Washington, Los Angeles, Houston, and other cities.